For our weekly segment with NFL Hall of Fame columnist John McClain. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus. And best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects. With 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943. Read John's work at GallerySports.com and SportsRadio610.com.
He is the everyman when it comes to what he writes, his columns, and who he writes for. Again, GallerySports.com. I noticed they followed me on Twitter today. I think it's because of our segment with the Hall of Famer. John, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Well, we'll start with the Texans. I know you cover more than that, but I always get your feedback on them. Lost to Denver 16-9 or whatever the score. Very low-scoring game.
Davis Mills, their quarterback that everybody had such high hopes for. First game against the Colts, 2020 tied, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 98.4 rating. Then he stunk it up at Denver, had the 3rd lowest rating of his career. No interceptions, but no touchdowns. Only got in the red zone once. In his defense, he threw what should have been a touchdown pass to Brandon Cooks, who usually has sure hands, and he dropped it. Another time they had a chance to score. Laramie Tunsil had a penalty, so they're still struggling. They tied the Colts. The defense played really well. You know, you go to Denver and you hold Russell Wilson to 1 touchdown and you totally discombobulate their offense and you neutralize defensive end Bradley Chubb, you ought to win the game. But right now they got problems on their offense and they go to Chicago. Chicago's as bad as they are.
John, the division, though, I mean, the Jaguars are in first place after shutting out the Colts. What's going on in that division?
It's awful. Texans are half game out of first place. So are the Colts. Titans are in last place. What it means is if the Colts or Titans rebound from terrible starts, or if the Jaguars, who are 1-1 after shutting out the Colts 24-0, win 7 or 8 games, they could win the division. We were joking today on one of my shows on Outkick.com about how you can win 7 games and win this division because they're so bad right now. And the Titans, it's hard to believe it, the Titans had home field advantage in the AFC playoffs last year, and Ryan Tannehill was terrible, and he's been terrible so far this season. And then Buffalo right now, Buffalo's going to Miami. Buffalo's supposed to be unbeaten. Buffalo's supposed to be blowing people out. But the Dolphins, what a story.
Wow.
What a story it's going to be if they were to upset the Bills. Tua Tagovailoa, who they didn't want. They did everything they could last year to get Deshaun Watson, even had a deal worked out, 3 1s, a 3 and a 5 that fell apart before the November 2nd trade deadline because the owner wanted the 22 civil suits to be settled. So now they got stuck with Tua, and he knew everybody wanted Justin Herbert, even though they took Tua above him. I was happy with it. Class act, always has been. His only issue has been he's hurt every year. You'd like to see him stay healthy. If he does with those receivers, their offense is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was insane. That was the weekend of crazy comebacks. And the Bengals almost had one against Dallas, but the Miami won. And who was the other one that Cleveland blew a lead?
The Jets.
The Jets.
The Jets. Joe Flacco, 4 touchdown passes. The Cardinals came back from the dead, engineered by Kyler Murray. Just a miraculous comeback. But the biggest one was Flacco. Flacco was awful in the first game against Baltimore, and they couldn't even score more than field goals. And then he throws 4 touchdown passes and engineers 2 touchdowns right at the end. Everything that had to go wrong for the Browns did. They missed an extra point. Then Nick Chubb should have gone down outside the end zone. Instead, he scored, gave him another chance. He said he lost the game. He didn't lose the game. Coach should have told him to go down, or don't even hand him the ball. Tell the quarterback to kneel it.
John, the Chargers and Chiefs was a great game last Monday night Thursday night. Justin Herbert got hurt, but was that game kind of more evidence that while the Chargers are getting better, the Chiefs still kind of own that division?
I think it's pretty clear the Chiefs own that division. Doesn't matter who they have at wide receiver. As long as they have Andy Reid calling the plays and Patrick Mahomes executing those plays, they're as good as any team. It would be a great AFC championship game if the Chiefs went to Buffalo this season after the Bills didn't get the ball in overtime last year, and the Chiefs won one of the greatest playoff games in history. Even though there's a lot of good teams in the AFC, boy, those two are, to me, heads and shoulders above each other, and you just hope one of them doesn't get derailed because of injuries.
Yeah, John, that looks like a collision course, yeah.
John, how scrappy was that effort by Cooper Rush and the Cowboys?
It's so funny. Cooper Rush's situation reminded me of Romo, who sat for 3 years, then Jason Garrett when he started 2-0. I don't think anybody suspected it. Most people thought the Bengals would bounce back. I didn't have high expectations for the Bengals because usually the Super Bowl loser falters. Don't know why that is. Should be the hungriest team in the league. Micah Parsons is the best pass rusher in the NFL. If the NFL Defensive Player of the Year vote was taken now, he would win it after the season. If he stays healthy, he's probably going to win it. And I always love success stories. And he was one, Rush. The problem is he was overshadowed by all these incredible comebacks.
Yeah, he was. You've seen him, the great defensive players that just disrupt people, that make quarterbacks and offensive coordinators fear for their life and not sleep during the week. How good and where do you see right now Micah Parsons and his trajectory?
Now, I'm just saying this right now. I'm not saying for the rest of the season or next year, but when I see him line up, he reminds me of Lawrence Taylor. And Lawrence Taylor wasn't LT right off the bat, but it was pretty obvious he was great. Bum Phillips bypassed him in the draft to take running back George Rogers, and George Rogers was so stupid on a check he wrote when it put what it was for. He put cocaine, and then he ended up getting suspended. And Taylor, of course, is one of the two greatest defensive players I've ever seen, along with Reggie White. And Micah Parsons moves around. But I tell you what, if Dan Quinn drops him into coverage one more time, people ought to throw up in their mouths. When he does something like that, the offense is like, whew, have him get the quarterback every single time.
John, which is worse, writing cocaine on a check or Jerry Springer when he was mayor of Cincinnati paying a hooker with the city check?
Did he put it on his checkbook? Did he write what it was for, hooker? I think it was worse for Jerry Springer because he should have been smarter about that.
Oh my God, I'd never heard that story. You honestly do you wish?
Are there drug dealers that take checks?
Yeah, that was just. John, do you ever wish sometimes you could write a book just through your mind? You realize how many great books you could write just if you could close your eyes and just remember all the stories you know.
I know a lot of stories in my radio station. The program director and the head of advertising, we went to lunch last week, and the head of advertising is from Cleveland. He said, "You got any Brown stories?" So 30 minutes later, I said, "I got more depending on how much time you got." I have compiled so many stories. And then the program director says, "You know what? We should do a podcast with you telling your stories." I said, "I always do. I'm already doing 3 a week." By the way, it's called Utopia. And I hope people check it out. I do 3 a week with Sean Pendergast, one of my morning hosts here. But I told him, if you want me to do another one, it's going to cost you a little more money.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I want to be your agent as well.
I love telling those stories. I got Baylor stories. I got Baylor football, Baylor basketball, a few Baylor baseball stories I can remember. A lot of good Baylor stories.
John,
In fact, excuse me, Craig, I remember one time, there was a great Baylor basketball player. This was a long time ago, and I'm not going to say who it is because he's been honored by Baylor. And this was decades ago. And they saw him in the summer, and they asked him what he was doing. He said he had a summer job. "Well, really, what are you doing?" "I'm working at Baylor Stadium." "What's your job?" "Making sure there's no seaweed in the stadium." He did a great job of that.
Hey, got to do what you got to do, I guess. John, any initial thoughts on the Pro Football Hall of Fame ballot that was released today, 2023 nominees?
Oh, my God, Craig. There's 125 on that list. Until we get it down to 25 and cut it to 15 finalists. And I will say this. Joe Thomas Darrelle Revis, and I think DeMarcus Ware are the three locks to me. I'll be presenting Andre Johnson again in his first year of eligibility. Like DeMarcus Ware, he made cut from 15 to 10, but not to 5 because we didn't make any first-year guys. We didn't put them in because we wanted to take care of people who've been waiting a long time. But I think those three are locks because they're three of the greatest in history.
All right.
I have one quick follow-up. I know he won't first ballot, and I know it's hard to get punters in, but will Shane Leckler ever have a legit shot?
I believe he will. Maybe I won't because he played it with the Raiders longer. But I'll say this. There's only 2 punters on the NFL's 100-year anniversary team. Ray Guy, who's in the Hall of Fame, Shane Leckler, who's in his first year of eligibility. I will do everything I can to help Shane, who was voted in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, I think 3 years ago, if I can get Andre Johnson in there first.
All right. Okay. There you go. There you go. Baylor with the win. They were supposed to win. They did. They handled business. It still seems like it's kind of at times a struggle for them on offense, and now they're about to go back in on the road where they've struggled. Iowa State coming up on Saturday, John.
I watched the game, and I'm wondering, Baylor's always had a lot of really good receivers for a long time, going back to when Art Browse got there and started recruiting them and then making use of them. And Chapin is struggling throwing the ball down the field. And I wonder how much is it his receivers not getting separation, how much of it is Chapin. But I tell you what I want to see more of from Jeff Grimes, and that's Reese. That kid is a touchdown waiting to happen every time he touches the ball. I know he's 170 pounds, and you got to be careful. But, man, I would get him the ball in space. I'd let him run through the tackles behind that veteran offensive line. I'd try to control the clock to keep my defense fresh. One of the things I like about Baylor right now are the offensive and defensive lines. And it wasn't too long ago when they struggled in both areas and got beat up bad. And now they do the beating.
Yeah, the Pro Football Focus had them ranked as the top, among the I guess, number 3 offensive line after a couple of weeks of the college football season. And, you know, he kind of got on them a little bit after Brigham Young, but they were obviously in a dogfight with the Cougars, who then got smoked by Oregon.
I was stunned about that. I thought, sure, after as well as BYU played against Baylor, they're going to go up and beat Oregon. And then, of course, Oregon beat the heck out of them. I feel like if BYU were in the Big 12 this year, they had a good chance to win it. University of Houston, not so much.
All right, John, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Remember, guys, they come.
They come. GallerySports.com, 610 Sports Radio, online, writes, Hall of Fame writer, Hall of Famer, Pro Football Hall of Fame. This is Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports, and the top.